Welcome to One Foot in Both Worlds, keeping it real with Tanya and Nettie. Hey, Tanya, how are you?
I'm wonderful, Nettie. Should we share my super exciting news?
Yes, yes, let's do.
Okay, so I have booked a flight, and my son and I are coming to visit Nettie in Australia, and I'm leaving in about 3 weeks. So in March, I am extremely excited and also really nervous, but I can't wait. So Nettie and I are going to get to see each other in person once again.
That's right. Well, it'll still be summer over here, the end of summer, so we can take you to the beaches and actually koalas and the kangaroos that jump past my window every day. You'll get to see. So it's
Oh
awesome.
my God, you're just going to see this little girl like it's going to be funny.
We'll have to post a little video of your time in
Yeah,
Australia
yeah,
just
yeah.
so that
Yeah.
those that are not in Australia can have a look at what
Yeah.
Australia
And
is
see
like from a
me
tourist.
bouncing up and down from excitement.
Yeah. We might even be able to do some in-person podcasting. We didn't do that when we were in Canada. We were going to, but we didn't have a lot of time. So, um,
Yeah, I don't know how techy we would do that, but we'll figure it out.
yeah.
But I am
We
so excited. My table's shaking. I am so excited to get into our discussion because we were just catching up and gabbing a little bit before, and we started talking about something, and then we were like, okay, let's press record so that nobody misses our process. So
Yeah. If anyone listened to our last one, we touched on the telepathy tapes. I think we talked a fair bit about it. But my brother had initially sent me the link to it and said, "Hey, I've listened to a couple of these. You'll love them." And this is he's telepathic, and in a minor way, but he is, and he's never really talked about it. And so listening to these tapes was such an eye opener for him to say, "Hey, there's other people like that, and it's real." And so I sent it to Tanya because I knew Tanya would like it. Then Tanya binge watched it,
yeah, I
listened
got
to
up to about like
it.
episode 8.
Yeah. And I listened to two of them and I stopped. And there's a couple of reasons why, but time was the biggest one. Anyway, my brother rang me and said, or messaged me and said, have you listened to all the telepathy tapes? I don't think you have. You need to listen to all the telepathy tapes. And I want to talk about it. I want to discuss it with you. There's so many elements that you will relate to as you listen through. But also, I want to talk about his own telepathy and that sort of stuff. So I made a commitment to him that I would listen to them. So I have, and I'm up to number 9. I think you said is there 10th or something
There's a
like that?
10. Yeah, I just listened to like probably the first 30 seconds of number 10, and then I got busy. Hopefully I can listen to more today, or I
Yeah.
listen to the one I drive, right? So it's when I'm driving to work and home from work, stuff like that. But it's great. Like I find that it's touching on so many things that we've shared in this podcast, which I find so fascinating by the parallels of the information that we've shared, and they keep throughout the telepathy tapes. But how does this work? And it's like, ooh, ooh,
Yeah.
ooh, ooh.
Pick me, I know.
Yeah,
Spirit just
we
told
can
me.
explain it. You might not like it because it's not scientific, but we can actually explain it. So it's so cool the how that podcast information and then our information coincided. And one thing that was really interesting is that if you go back to the parallel lives, the subconscious, the conscious, those pieces that Nettie did, I was off here having a temper tantrum because I was so choked that I hadn't kind of understood this information earlier. But it was also took processing for me because it was like, wow, had I really understood this and understood the pineal, I think life would have been a lot easier. So I was kind of messaging Nettie. I'm like, dude, I get that it's like a super fabulous download, but like just let me process here because it's a bit of a smack in the face in some ways. It was for me. Really, it was a complete gift, but there was just a little bit of time with it, if that makes sense. But Nettie messaged me and she goes, Tanya, this has to go up now. Like it is time. We need to put it out. And that was right around when this podcast came out. Like
Oh,
fascinating to me.
wow. Yeah. And the other piece of it is that when I was listening to the other day, she was talking about the age of like, did we all used to be telepathic or and we've somehow, decided not to be, or like society has. And we speak about that a year ago. One of my favorite downloads that I got was when they showed me the graph of age, and also the graph of time, of how we have changed from being quite intuitive, becoming very unintuitive as a society, and then going back into the intuitiveness, and that we're down this bottom where we're just picking up. And these telepathy tapes, actually, I see when they came on, I'm like, these are part of this. This is part of this up, which is super cool. Um, but I'm listening to it and I'm like, oh, I know that data. They've given me that data. Here it is.
Yeah.
And then the age, they're talking about age. I think that's really important to run alongside the telepathy tapes that they haven't discussed very much. But the purpose of being in our human body is huge. And there's times where we shouldn't be as telepathic as we are in other times of our life. And I think for these autistic non-speakers or spellers, whatever they would like to be referred to, is they don't have the gift of being able to be in their body as much, or the respect or understanding from us to let them be in their body. They still need to be that. But because they're not understood properly, they're not given that chance in their teenage years and in that to be in their body as much as they can. And sometimes their bodies just won't work with them.
Yeah.
And so they can't. But if we understand them more, we may give them that time in their body that they need. But just as generally species, I think they've been given, um, like, their importance of their telepathy is next level. And what we can learn from them through their
Yes.
lives is what I really hope will be a result of, not, I mean, people have been trying to do this for a long time. So the telepathy tapes aren't really something new. They're just a new platform to put them on, and hopefully a more open-minded community to listen to them. So
Yeah, and I have to say though, I can't think of any other medium or outlet that has really dove into the extent of the spiritual gifts and abilities that this podcast has, which I really enjoy.
yeah.
What's really interesting is in the conscious subconscious download is that Spirit came through and talked about providing us information and everything to our subconscious when we sleep. And do you remember there was that piece on your neck? It was something about kind of shutting it down when you were in your subconscious. That is why they don't have that cooperation in their bodies
Yeah.
in order to be able to operate because they're in the subconscious, which connects and shuts down those almost nerve receptors at
Yeah,
the
there's
back of the
three.
neck.
They showed me three, yeah, points on that.
Yeah,
When you go back and look at the subconscious, you'll see a diagram, and there's 3 points when you sleep that shut off. Yeah.
yes. And so for us, we do it when we sleep. They are able to do it when they're awake. But that's why when they live so often in that subconscious, that's why their bodies aren't cooperating and they're having trouble sort of not controlling, but just being in their bodies. I thought that was super fascinating.
Yeah.
And if I could just take a sec, Nettie, I just want to, because we're throwing around these words, conscious, subconscious, pineal, balance, all of that. We didn't really, there's plenty of podcasts about it, but in this one, I just want to really quickly kind of recap. So the subconscious is basically spirit information. It's the universe. It's where they give us downloads. They give us information. They it's the universe,
It's your
really.
intuitive
Yeah, it's
side.
the yeah, and piggybacking on that. So there's Spirit explained that the interaction of when they come into the body. There's the spiritual nervous system and there's the physical nervous system, the pineal being the space in between. So on the intuitive side is the subconscious, and on the physical side is the conscious mind. And sort of, I point to my head a lot, like it really kind of is about a state of awareness. And then there's this nice little bridge in between that bridges between the subconscious and the conscious called the pineal. And it's basically a lot of what we've been talking about that space of balance when you can balance your physical nervous system and your intuitive nervous system and they kind of come together. Does that
Yeah.
explain it? Okay.
Absolutely. That's definitely worth adding. One of the things you were talking about with those three elements that you shut off and the use of their physical body and the connection to their brain to actually make things move. And at times they can't feel their arms and things like that. They have to sort of be
Or they lose
reminded.
their bodies. They lose that they even
Yeah.
have bodies. And that's why.
Yeah. So when I get a download or when I do a big reading for someone, especially big downloads, or when I wake up in the morning and I've had like I've been to another place in effect, I often have trouble speaking. So I'll come in and my husband will know that I've had a bigger download or something. It's like I can't get back into my physical body very well. And so I'll go to talk, and what my brain wants to come out of my mouth and what comes out of my mouth is like a disjointed, can't finish words sort of thing. So I can relate to that when you are out of your physical body, you can't communicate properly when you're getting this information while you're awake. It's a really difficult way, but by being awake, you can consciously remember it. And so it's an important tool, but at the same time, it's really hard. And I even find I will hit into things. So it's like I'm slightly out of alignment of my body a little bit because yeah, I've left it and then I've come back in, and those two nervous systems aren't sitting properly on each other. One's sort of up or across, and until I can sort of get that to put back into the center, then I can start speaking well and doing all those things. So I think as mediums, we are very lucky that we are able to have a very good functioning physical body, but also be able to do these readings and things while we're awake or receive these downloads while we're awake. I think that is like it's made me think how privileged we are to get that and to really push to make sure that we respect that. And I don't think we don't respect it, but it means even more so that,
I think we can take it for granted though, because there's definitely been times where I've struggled with connection because there's been lots going on, and then I realize how much I actually use it.
yeah,
And yeah, it's not that we take it for granted that we don't appreciate it. You just get used to it.
yeah. And I think for a lot of the listeners, they will have a certain amount of this that that we should respect and value. And as you said, not take for granted because it can come and go. There's times where you feel like, oh my gosh, I can't connect, and others where you're like, boom, it's
Yes.
like overload.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's something that will tie into what you were talking about the graph with the ages is since, I mean, if you guys are following along in the podcast, you'll know that I'm putting a lot more effort to sitting in my pineal as opposed to sitting a bit more forward in my conscious mind. And it's made a really big difference in sort of how I operate in the world. And I really like it. But what's happening, and when I'm in the pineal, I'm not off in the ethers or anything, but I am having a little bit more troubles grasping words, remembering things. I've missed two really important dates at work that for some reason I have no idea why. I didn't check my planner and I didn't write down. And the other thing that's happening is like this isn't to say that I'm chubbier. This isn't to say that I think physical fitness isn't important. That's not what I'm saying. I have less desire to go out and grind out a workout, to lift a bunch of weights and be sore. I have less desire to make sure I'm dieting in order to reach this particular goal. I mean, I've always kind of been like that. I want to a bit, but I just recently in the working out thing, because a lot of I work with a great group of people and they'll go off and do these sort of group workouts. I don't want to. Like, I just don't. And I'm finding, and I just kind of put the pieces together now, since I've been sitting in that pineal and a little more connected to the intuitive on a regular basis as opposed to the physical, I'm not as concerned with the physical
yeah. And I
in that
think,
way, if that makes sense. I want to relax. I want to sit back. I want to chill.
yeah,
It's really a shift. And I do recall when you got the download that the there was kind of in this phase right where I'm at is where that really changes.
Yeah, and I think if you go back and you're listening, listen to the diet and the body and mind download, which we got over a year ago. Um, we talk about this a lot, and I think even if we had that conversation now, it would be a different conversation for you because you're in a different place. Um,
Yes.
but for me, I've always had a really healthy respect for my body. But that I don't go to the gym, I don't work out, I don't wear makeup, I don't do any of that. Part of it is because of my sensory stuff that I get so much in my face. I can't handle people touching my face or putting anything over my face, but mostly because I don't see a need for it. Usually for me, I watch people mask themselves and I watch people try and be something they're not. Now, it doesn't mean I love watching people get fit and healthy and if it's something that they want to do. But I I don't understand and I never have understood this drive to be a poster picture that you look at and say everyone's got their eyebrows this way, everyone's got their lips this way. I don't see that. I really value everyone's individual offering, but I think it's because we don't see the physical as much on its own. We very much see the spirit and the soul of the person.
Yes.
And when you see that, you're not looking at physical, you're looking at that beautiful soul, and that face and that image belongs to that beautiful soul. So that face and that image is something really positive. It's like, when someone sees a like a choc top ice cream, they go, "Oh, I want that." Now, it's the look of that choc top ice creams aren't that attractive. But it's the whole, oh, that's something really good. And when you see the soul, that's the taste of that person, that
Yeah.
inner feeling.
That
What
ice cream.
that ice cream, that person is that to you, and you love them for that, and you love the look of them for that. And I've talked about this back when we talked about body conscious, about two brothers that we met once, and I was like, oh, he is such an attractive person. I really like we were like 14 or 15, and he was, I don't know, a similar age within a couple of years. And someone said, oh my gosh, have you seen, one of the brothers is so good looking. And I'm like, yeah. And then we realized we were talking about the other person. And one of them was actually physically could have been a model. And the other one was this short, chubby little thing. That's the one I was attracted to. I thought he was one of the most attractive people I'd seen, but I wasn't thinking of it sexually. I was thinking he's just like, I was drawn to him.
Lovely.
And
Yep.
as we got to know him over the year, he was over the next years and years, he was one of the most lovely people I've ever met. And I realized, that was one of the points where I realized, oh, I'm seeing a different person to what most people see. I'm not seeing that thing. And I think I love that. I love that gift of not having that I don't have to look in the mirror. I mean, to be honest, we don't barely have a mirror in the house. I don't look at mirrors. I don't think they're important. I think physically, I like to dress well and I brush my hair and I walk out well presented. I enjoy that. I'm an interior designer. I like fashion. I like design,
Yep.
but not for anyone else, just to be comfortable within myself. And I think most people, or a lot of people, where they go wrong is when they're trying to do it for somebody else.
Yeah.
Um, and
Or to kind of like what I'm finding at my age, and I just want to put a pin in it because I want you to go back to the explanation of where your intuition comes in and out based on age. But like what happens for me is I'm 45 and I'm definitely noticing a lot of people that are getting filler in their lips. And I mean, this is okay. If that's what you do, that's what you do. But what I find happens for somebody that doesn't do it, I do get Botox right here, though. Otherwise, I look really angry. That is truly, oh, yeah, but I scrunch my eyebrows together all the time to the point where people are like, are you okay? I'm like, no, no, I'm fine. My Botox is just coming out from my resting bitch face. No problems. So I do get that. But what I'm finding is that people have the Botox and the fillers and the lips and all of those things. And then you look at them and you're like, but I'm this age and you're this age. Why do you look like that? And I don't,
yeah.
and like that's what I'm really starting to notice. And I actually think it's more work to be okay with being you and being the way you look. Like that, I think takes more work. And that's not to say that I don't notice attractive people or find attractive people attractive. I do. But I 110% see so much more in somebody that like when I see some like I'm attracted to men, when I see men that are doing all of that stuff, I don't like it. And to be honest, most men that I talk to, when there's those women that are really quite done up, and we're not trying to call you out, even though we're calling you out, they don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
explain the age thing and the
yeah.
intuition because I'm definitely really experiencing it.
Yeah, so one of the first downloads that I got was there was two at the same time, and one of them was your age balance of intuition and physical. And so basically it was talking about, and when we talk about the telepathy tapes, it's quite interesting because teenagers in particular are very much should be in their physical, was what they told me, so that they will actually be attracted to other people. And therefore we get
Babies.
babies. And so that physical attraction and that sexual attraction is heightened during that time. And then as you go, you sort of start as a baby with almost no physical awareness and you're intuitive. And then you go quickly up into these teenage years and then you come back down. And I can't remember the exact thing, although I'm pulling the chart up now. It looks like about our age, we should be about 30% to about 70% physical. And then you go further down. So that 30% that we are should be in our intuitive brain and we should be leading the intuitive. That's where the physical should start to not be as relevant. And as you know, they're showing me now very quickly because it's been some time since we've done this, so I'm getting all the pictures quickly in front of me again as I'm
Good, good, good.
accessing that room. But they're talking about how, you just mentioned before that you're attracted to men, and they're saying that as you get older, that gets less relevant because it's not that you're not attracted to men, it's just that that the physical side of it starts to dissipate. So you're not necessarily attracted to the same men or the same muscles or the same things physically. There's still 70% of you wanting that physical attraction. So it's definitely there. But you may find that you have a type that you would not what you normally go to, and you're actually finding this other person really attractive. And it's because you're like, oh, physically, they're not what I would normally go for. But you're seeing that intuitive side of you, and you're seeing that inner side of them because you're leading with more intuitiveness than you are with physical. And they even say to the point where they're saying people can get attracted to the same sex that they weren't in the past because they are less attracted to the physical and they do that. Obviously, that's only some people in extreme cases, but they are
But
showing
I
me
don't
that,
think I actually don't think that's an extreme case. I think sexuality is changing very
yeah,
quickly.
yeah,
And I love that explanation that
yeah.
you would just be attracted to the soul,
Because
not the physical body.
yeah, this is the important thing. Souls have no sex. So a
Yeah.
soul is not a male or a female. It's really important to remember that. And so we have no race, we have no color, we have no sex, we are literally the same energy. And we come from the same energy. So in
Yes.
fact, we're all related.
Yes, we're all connected. And that was the thing that they talked about on the podcast and about all of us being all connected and other people knowing about this boy that died and they already knew. And what I love about it is it's so validating to the stuff that we already know and understand and try to put words to,
Yeah.
So it's yeah, I'm really enjoying listening to it. But there was a piece that we talked a little bit off screen about the hill. And so the spirit kept showing me this, like how it sort of exists. There's like the higher consciousness, and then there's the people, and then there's this other thing. And I'm like, but that's the hill. And then Nettie came in and sort of explained it a little bit differently as well. Because I have to say, I don't travel around like Nettie did. I did as a child. I expect as I move forward, I will be. I have just lived, I'm a police officer. I've been a police officer for 24 years. Like, I have lived in such a logical space that I just, I mean, I've had my gifts and abilities, but not in the same way that you do. So,
Yeah.
anyways, so I just want to explain that because you were able to talk about sort of how you travel. Let's call it travel. I don't know what to call it, but I'm just saying I don't do that. This is Nettie. I mean,
Yeah.
I do. I'm just not aware of it.
And I call it the places I go when I dream, whether I'm awake or asleep. Okay. So it's interesting. Um, I've got a few places that I go. And after listening to the telepathy tapes, I was like, I wonder if I've ever been to the hill. And I was getting to me, I was getting a no logically. I've never been there. And so as I was sleeping, I was asking Spirit about the hill and whether this was the only place. And I felt like it wasn't, resoundingly felt like it wasn't. Um, and I felt like there was, when I looked at a diagram, I could see lots of hills. Um, visually. And so I went to sleep. I've been thinking about it for a few nights, but I went to sleep last night and I was asking, can you show me the hill or can I go to the hill? And then they said, as I was sort of getting into sleep, it says, no, you can't go to the hill. The hill, it's not only for those who don't speak, but it's a place for those who don't speak and those around them who work with people who don't speak because they need to be out the like when we talked about when we dream at night and we go places and we're shown all this sort of stuff, a lot of that is to get out our frustrations and our anxieties and do these things. For the non-speakers, it's a place where they can speak, where they can do the thing that their human body can't. And if they didn't have that, the frustration and trying to live in their body would be unbearable. And so the hill is a collective place and energy that they can go to. And it's really interesting because when my friend died, I talked about how I went to a place with him and I sat with a group of people who talked about fear. That
Yes.
is another place, and I have been there before. He had never been there before, but I recognized it. And at the start, they showed us sitting around with our legs crossed in a circle, this group of people. And then that quickly dissipated. And they said to me at the time, this is so that Matt, my friend who had passed, feels comfortable because he hasn't consciously been here, even though he's subconsciously been here before. He hasn't consciously, and they wanted him to remember this thing because it was important about he was going to pass away soon and they were talking to him about fear. And so they showed me within this little group that they showed what like a physical vision of it that he would feel comfortable with it. And then it dissipated and we were just energy and we were talking that we didn't
Right.
need to see things. And you hear the ones talking about the hill, they talk about this, like what does it look like? And they can describe it, but they said also we don't need to see in the hill. It's not about that. But
It's not about us.
but it's about the human understanding. Sometimes a vision is an easy way to do it. And then while I was kind of talking to Spirit about this, they then had, which they'd shown me over a week, they talked to me about the deaf. And my son had hearing issues when he was younger. And they said there's a place where the deaf go, there's a place where the blind go that are also telepathic. So there's a whole bunch of people. The spellers or the non-speakers are just one, and there's lots of them. And so I asked, well, where do I go? Because I can see and I can hear and I can speak. And then they had a door in front of me, and the doors were sort of familiar. And I opened them up and I walked in and went, oh, here. And I went into this place that I've been since I was a little child and that I go to. And I would have spent probably 4 or 5 hours there last night, which would have taken up probably 5 or 10 minutes in reality of our time. But it's like this massive resort with a huge mall in it. It's got escalators going up to different areas. And
You said this off screen, and I just have to say, every time you talk about this, I'm like, I've been there
yeah,
because I absolutely 110% have that exact same place that I go to. I just don't quite have the recall that you have.
yeah. And I have been gifted with a huge recall, and I think there's a purpose for it so that I can relate these things to people. I
Mhm.
understand that now. But yeah, it's cool. I go there. I
I
talk
would
to
call it a
people.
labyrinth when I was younger. that I would
Yeah.
go to this labyrinth because it would be like these intersecting stairways and
Lifts.
interesting.
Yeah, and there's rooms. I remember going there not long ago now as I'm doing this, and I was trying to find my room again, and I couldn't find my actual room. And my husband was in there, and I was looking for him as well. And he didn't go there very often. And I could go across the road to a place where I knew he could go all the time, but it was difficult for him to get into this space. So I was going across, and they were saying, you shouldn't cross across there. You should stay where you are. But I was like, I want to go and make sure he's okay. So I went across to make sure he was all right in the other. And interesting, my son is often in the place that I am. And I know as a child he was very gifted telepathically without knowing it, one, two, and three. And he did I always talk about the surprise that he pulled out, wrapped up, whatever you call those lucky
Hmm.
dips. He knew
Hmm.
what it was. Those sort of things were very common. Um, Actually, on that, one of the things that they talk about is they say these people can sort of see through your soul. And I remember my son when he was young, people would say, could you stop? He's staring at me. It's like he can see my soul. And people would say he's
Hmm.
an old soul. And I think they actually have that where they can read, they're telepathically reading you, and you can feel that energy of them like getting into your head. You're like, oh, stop reading me, like,
Yeah.
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 And they would do that. But yeah, this place is kind of cool. And I was like, oh yeah. And then as I woke up, I remembered a few other places that I go to all the time. And one of them I go up to, I went very clearly when I was doing a course, and we did this big meditation, and I went up to the top there, and I walked across, and there's a bench seat, and I sit next to this very tall being, and I sit and I watch myself leave my body and walk across and sit next to this person, and I can see without words there's an exchange, and then I walk back towards myself, and I feel myself pop in my body, and I know that the information they gave me was not for my conscious, but it was important for my subconscious. And I love that little exchange that happens every now and then. I love to be able to go there and know that I'm not ready for the information, but that will feed me over the week or the month, or
Hmm.
it's calmed me in a way subconsciously, not consciously. Um, yeah, so like I love listening to the telepathy tapes because there's so much of that I relate to for not only myself, for a lot of other people around, a lot of the mediums that I speak to. I think it would be really interesting to find out those who lucid dream a lot. So that's the important things with this. It's a lucid dreaming place that I call it. Um, it is a place where you can talk to other people and walk around, and it just looks like a dream. It looks like a mall in, an out of this world mall because it's got so many layers and so much happening, and it does change a bit as I need it to, but it looks like a real place. It looks like another world. And it is, as we speak about in the dream section, it's the way they do it. You can create that. And I wonder whether people, like you're saying, you've been there as well. I bet you yours looks different to mine, yet they're the same place. You know what I mean? They
Yeah.
all
I
look
just,
different to each other, but they're the same mall. And we put a vision on it that we can
of
relate
course
to.
we
And
do
yeah, which is super cool.
explain crossing over, like passing away, is that you say you were Christian and you would cross over and then still be able to go to church and go to potlucks and go to all of those things. But then after a little while, that fades and then you just kind of move into spirit. And another thing, so I think we can create those. The place that you're talking about that I go to, I am again not as conscious of it as you are. I I can think of a couple times that I've been there and I call it a labyrinth, but it often makes me feel really kind of anxious because I'm trying to get somewhere and I'm not quite getting there. So it bothers me. But I have definitely had the experience of like that astral traveling when I go into meditation, which is part of the reason why I don't meditate very much, because I am just out there and I am not terribly comfortable with it
Yeah.
in that sort of meditation state. Um, One thing that they talked about, I can't remember if it was episode 9 or what it was, but they talked about how on Earth, and sort of parallel lives and like this is such a hard to wrap my head around logically, but I'm sure I've said it on here before. It's all happening at the same time. I know I've said this. So my life in the 1960s and my life in 2025 and then my life in 2052, they're all happening at the same time. And our soul is kind of in all of those different places. Plus, it's connected to source, all of those things, right? And so they talked about that it's all sort of happening at once. And it's all about just experiencing um being on earth and all of the sort of things that it has to offer and about love and kindness. And it was validating to information that I have, information that I have been taught, not to the extent that because they don't have that logical piece as much as that conscious piece as much as we do. So there's such but I guess excuse me, but I guess they do
They
when it comes
do.
to actually getting it out there. So yes,
They just don't have the
they
verbal,
just corrected me.
yeah, they don't have the physical vessel to actually,
Mechanism.
yeah,
Yeah.
to actually say it as well. And our naiveness is not letting them have that. They have a way of having that. We're just naively not letting that grow within that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting you said the place that you feel anxious, that's your memories are anxious. And I can tell you why that is. I'm very
Please
familiar with
do.
this. So most of my 4 hours is not anxious, but often before I wake up, which is probably where you're remembering it because your body's taking you from there to the awake stage. And somewhere in there, you've crossed over and you remember it a little bit. But last night's one, for instance, I actually physically needed to go to the toilet, right, where I was sleeping. And so in this, I'm going up this lift with this person that I was having a lovely conversation with. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, do you know where the toilets are? And they were like, oh, I think there's a toilet on every level. And I'm like, oh, okay. So we got to the top and her and I were looking for these toilets and we couldn't find them. And she goes, the toilets are normally there. And like, I know they're normally there. And in these like things, you can go to the toilet, you can have lunch. It can be 5 days. So you do everything that's normal. But at this time, everywhere I went where I thought there was a toilet, it was missing. And so I was getting quite anxious because I'm like, no, I really need to go to the toilet. And then I went, oh, maybe I actually really need to go to the toilet physically. And so I woke up in bed and went, oh shit, I really need to go to the toilet. And um, I'd had a cup of tea before bed and we'd gone out to my sister's and had a few drinks and stuff. And when I'd got home, I couldn't be bothered going to the toilet. So I just went to sleep. And so obviously at what, 3 a.m. or whatever it is, my body's like, no, you need to go to the toilet now. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that came in. And so the end of my dream, the bit that I remember was anxiously looking for this thing. Now, if I didn't remember all that other stuff before it, all I would remember was the bit where spirit woke me up, where it said, come on. And actually, in one of the podcasts, they talk about the boy trying to make the mum go out of her subconscious into her lucid, into the pineal,
Hmm.
so she would remember it. And that's what it does when it's trying to push you across. It's trying to push you across to wake up. And for you, it's probably sorting something out, or like with me, it's that anxiousness. It's like it's trying to sort out something that you need to, which is a fear or something within your life, but it hits a point where there's enough anxiety for it to pop into your pineal and even into your conscious, and then you wake up and
Mm.
you remember that anxious bit and you go, I don't want to go back to that mall. But what you
That's not a
probably
fun
did,
place.
you probably had a lot of fun for hours and hours with people that you communicate with all the time, and we've probably met there before because when we met we felt like we knew each other instantly,
100%.
and
Yeah.
especially more from probably a Zoom point of view than we did in physical. It was like our we just you just know people, and I think that in fact they're showing me that that is why, because we have been to not only that place but a couple of other places collectively across our lives, our souls' lives,
You and I?
you and I. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's not wrong
That
to
makes
say,
sense because we have a great connection
yeah,
and a great understanding of each other. that I don't know that I've experienced it with
with a
people
human.
before. Yeah, it's very calm, very easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we very much get each other.
Yeah. And I think that that's because we saw out some of the stuff outside of our bodies,
Oh, yeah.
right?
That's an
And so then
interesting
what,
point.
yeah. And then like, because spirit sometimes says to me, just wait, like you got to wait. And I think it gives spirit time for us to go and have those conversations outside of our body and then come back into the body. And the other thing is people want to try and remember it, but sometimes remembering all this stuff is unnecessary because it does clutter your life. Like I have a very cluttered life because a very full life because I'm living my life, but I'm also remembering all these other things that are in it. And I was just talking about with a friend actually that's got ADHD, and I'm helping him with a house that they're him and his wife with a house they're renovating. And he said, oh, it's so hard because he's got ADHD. So he gets his house and he's like, I want to do this and starts doing this. And then he goes across to this. And he's very capable and very active. And he said, you're so calm. And I said, no, my mind has ADHD. My mind goes full on all the time. I said, I can't listen to music or have the telly on very often. I can't have noisy people around because I have so much going on in my head.
Yeah.
And for me to actually focus on one task, very, very difficult. But and then I've got spirit right coming in telling me
Yeah.
things. And if I do quiet my mind to a really good space where I'm just working on something, that is
Then spirits,
such a good opening for spirit. Yeah.
yes. And then they're in going, "Da-da-da-da-da-da-da."
Yeah. Then
Yes.
singing boy comes in. And next
Yeah,
minute
yeah, yeah.
I'm sitting writing down a song that this singing
I
boy has given me.
understand.
So
I do understand. And one thing, another thing and there was all these just little snippets from the telepathy tapes, but one thing they said is that they had to get their mind blank. And you and I, that's exactly what would happen. You and I, we would do dishes, spirit comes in. Cleaning my house, spirit comes in. Vacuuming, spirit comes in.
yeah.
Neither one of us does a sitting, calm sort of meditation. We more do like going for a walk, going out in nature. And those are the ways that we are able to access our further back, like our subconscious, because we need to have our physical bodies moving in
Yes.
order to be able to quiet that physical side in order to access the intuitive side. And the same thing is true for the people on the podcast, is because they're having to not move their body, but be conscious of their body
Yeah.
in order to come in and be able to share sort of what's in the subconscious. So it's a bit of an opposite. They need to come into the body, and we almost need to like distract it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, it's super cool. And for me, it's just, it feels like someone else is talking about what happens to me or to us in a dramatic way, but it's so relatable. And
Yeah.
and and they talk about trying to normalize this. And I actually on one of a sites that I'm on, I think it's Australian Spiritual something, and I went on it when we started podcasting because I was like, I don't really know what other people are doing. Like I've never been in the spiritual field, so I don't know what. So I joined it, and I really don't look at it very often. But I put on there just saying, is anyone else watching the telepathy tapes? And I'd only seen two of them at that stage. And just interested in your thoughts because I wondered whether they actually did what we did, where we can relate to it and go, oh yeah, I can do that. I go to this place. I do that. I do that. These things that have been normal for me since I was born. You know, I saw Andy's mate the night before he died, or as he died, like with John Paul, I was relating to that. I'm like, yeah, he came and said, "Are you okay? I'm leaving."
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of things in small elements that they talk about which seem normal to me, which are not as normal as I thought. I found out when I was older. But you know, just having that. So I wrote on there, you know, has it and I think I wrote the words, I'm loving that this is being normalized. And the first comment was normal, question mark. There's nothing about that this is normal. And I was really
It
surprised
is to us.
coming from a spiritual site that someone said
Yes.
this. And I wrote back and just said, well, it is for me and for my family. not in the way that they are, but in the intuitive side, little things just we can relate to. Um, and I was hoping that I'd hear from others that would say, oh, yeah, this is normal for us too. And a couple of people did come on and started to comment on, I love the tapes, blah, blah, but no one had sort of that word normal was not attacked again in any way. But I think that is where we need to get. For me, when we've talked about it from the start of when we started podcasting, what I want is, especially when we talked about the age group and then the years it's going to take to come back into our intuitive, I just want people to listen to their intuitive abilities. I
Yes.
want
And we
people to
talk about
know
that
that. Yeah,
all the time.
yeah. And I think that that's what telepathy text helps with. And for these
Yep.
poor people who are stuck in their bodies and have such a wonderful way of communicating, and we're shutting that down, and they say on there, I think it starts with, no one would listen to them. But I think a lot of people do listen to them. I think it's just the majority of people don't. And
But
they're afraid
Nettie,
of it.
I was just gonna say it's very similar to you and I having these abilities, doing this work, and having the podcast and being uncomfortable
Yeah,
coming out of the closet.
yeah.
So I don't know if it's that people didn't listen, it's that people are afraid to talk about it.
Fear. Yeah,
Yeah, and I understand that. Like I have people in my life that don't know that I have these abilities because I don't want to be looked at like I'm a little bit nuts. I like them to, see me as the person that I am, and then when I tell them, they're like, I never would have guessed it, but okay, because you're a legitimate, you're
yeah.
kind of a legitimized person. Um,
That's where
but
the
I was
shift
just
needs to be, though, right? The shift needs
yeah.
to be where we are comfortable saying, "Oh, hi." It was interesting because one of the people actually does it the way that I do it. I get a spirit come to me,
Yes. Yes, I
and then I've got
saw
to
that.
find them. And I was like,
Yes.
it was so
I'm
validating
like,
for me.
oh, I know. I thought of you as well when I listened to that. And I was like, oh, that's totally Nettie because I've had that happen, but I don't like it. I want to
Yeah,
connect to spirit when I'm ready to connect to spirit. And that's sort of how I roll. They sneak in a lot better now, and I'm living, way more with information coming in than I did before.
but it's respectful way of
Oh,
doing it, right? It's the respectful
it's what
way is
works for
someone
me.
coming to you, which is how a lot of mediums work. Someone comes to you, and yes, you might get the information before they turn up, but they've made the decision that they want to know something, and you've done that. I got very dark all of a sudden.
Yeah, you did.
Um, oh.
There you go.
And but for me, I've never. I mean, I can do that, but it's not the way spirit works. And I don't read for people as paid. And it was very important not to be paid for the work for me, the way that they want me to do it. And I'm like, and I'm okay with that. But oh my God, my energy is going
Don't,
everywhere. I can
I
feel
don't,
it. You should
I
see this
know
hot and cold coming up all over me at the moment. Um,
you're like pure light when I'm looking at you.
so um, this is freaky, but yeah, I'm just trying to calm the energy down so it
Yeah.
don't
This
start
happens for anybody that's just
flowing.
joining. This happens to Nettie and I on a decently regular basis where the lights will flash, they'll go on and off, our computers won't work. That has not actually happened in a while, but that was interesting.
No, and anyone who's not watching this and listening, it was like I glowed. It was very
Literally.
weird.
Yeah.
I mean, it felt like
Yeah.
it too. I could feel the energy just come out. It was like a really
Yeah.
beautiful light. But anyway,
Yeah.
so that they spirits come to me and then they start giving me information, and sometimes it's over a week or a couple of days, and then I've got to go and find the person who the information
Or
belongs
kind of
to.
wait for them to because they're going to show up
Yeah,
somewhere somehow.
that's
Yeah.
right. And then they tell me this is it. And then, I've rang people up and said, can we catch up? This is going to be weird. And then because I don't go around saying I've got this ability, and for most people, even close friends of mine have no idea. I mean, they know I'm intuitive, but they don't know. Then to sit down with them and say, okay, so there's your grandfather just wants to tell you that blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Or your son that passed wants to tell you how he died, because
Right.
they don't
Yeah.
know. And things like that happen all the time, but I hadn't met anyone who does that. So on the telepathy tapes, I think number
Mm.
9, there's a girl who comes on and she had no abilities and then she got sick or something, didn't she? Something happened to her,
She got a brain injury.
a brain injury, and now she can do it. But she does it the same way that I do it. And she
Yeah.
also has been told that she doesn't read for people and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, so it's pretty cool how when you see someone who is very similar to you, that gets exciting too. Yeah, so back to the thing. I think we've done enough today. There's another really exciting part I want to talk about, but I think that's next podcast.
Okay. The
Yeah.
only thing that I wanted to really quickly share is that when Spirit was explaining to me autism and how people receive this information, and your lighting's doing it again, how people receive this information, like authors and scientists and all of that, that they somehow sort of tap into these sort of memory bubbles, and that's how they get the information. But what they said is that I'm a hybrid and Nettie, and so they said I'm a hybrid. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And it was basically like I'm balanced between my intuitive and physical. Like I've got that, 50-50. And then I asked them, I'm like, well, what about Nettie? And they said Nettie's 75%, which I don't know if that means intuitive, but I feel like they mean like as far as being able to connect to those things, if that makes or sense or resonates with you. But yeah, I was a hybrid and you were 75%, which I thought was really interesting. Maybe, that's going to make sense to us a little bit further along. But if you haven't listened to the telepathy tapes, I really encourage it. I feel like we're going to be unpacking them a little bit as we move forward, both on the same episode. We will be listening to more moving forward. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment if you have any questions. And thank you so much for being here with us. And we will see you all next time.